Welcome, everybody, to the Next Experience Academy. Today's session is going to be about the history of UI Builder and the Next Experience. My name is Maria Gabriela Ochoa Perez-Wechter, and I'm an outbound product manager on the Agent Experience team. And today I have an awesome guest with me today. He is...
Hello, everyone. My name is Chris Johnson, and I am a director on the product design team here at ServiceNow, and my teams are responsible for both UI Builder as well as Service Catalog.
Thank you, Chris. I am super excited to have you on here. As always, some quick housekeeping before we get started. Please use the Q&A for questions. It helps me gather them all up after the session and answer any that may not have been answered. Use the chat for comments to tell us what your drink is and what version you started on. And this session is being recorded. The slides and video will be made available at a later date. Now, what to expect? These sessions are for you. We have Chris here and we have an hour of his time. So feel free to ask any questions you might have about design, UI Builder, the history of UI Builder, things like that. Today, we won't necessarily be in the product configuring live. We'll be going down memory lane and we will be back soon, but not too soon. We will not be having a December Next Experience Academy. We're going to be back January 15th at 11 a.m. Eastern. And right before we get started, Safe Harbor. A lot of you may be familiar with this, but I am a product manager and Chris is a designer. So we may say things that are not yet in full release and general availability. So please do not make any purchasing decisions based off of what we say. But let's start with the UI through the ages section. Just a little bit of nostalgia. This is going to be a special session to close off the year, thinking back on the good old memories we had, starting with UI 11. Some of you may be familiar with this. A lot of you may be shocked by what you're seeing, but this is the good old UI 11. I never saw this myself. How about you, Chris?
I've only seen this UI when I've had to go and do a little bit of research into past versions of ServiceNow, but I've never actually regularly used it. It kind of gives me a little bit of nostalgic feeling for that, late 90s, early 2000s software UI with a lot of the grays and limited color palette. I kind of miss this sort of design aesthetic, to be honest.
Yeah, it looks kind of like it looks very retro for sure. It reminds me of Windows XP for some reason.
I was going to say Windows 2000 or maybe even Windows
Windows
95, but XP too, sure.
95, yes. Next, we have UI 15. Here we're getting a little bit more into what people might more readily recognize with the jelly pages and the jelly lists and forms, but we still are in the gray area. I think I saw this one time while I was troubleshooting a problem on that Helsinki instance, but then never again.
I accidentally turned this on for an instance for my team and quickly realized my mistake and turned it off.
Yeah, because actually you can still access UI 15 in your instance if you want to go in and get a blast from the past. Then we have good old UI 16, which most of us should be familiar with. It had the mostly green theme, but who here remembers any of the other themes? Like my favorite theme was Flamingo. I miss Flamingo so much.
So I've got a little fact for you. I am currently in Wisconsin, which for those of you who may not be aware is a pretty northern state in the United States and gets quite cold in the winter. But this spring there was a big storm in the south and it actually blew two flamingos into Lake Michigan and they landed in my town and were hanging out in Lake Michigan for a couple of days. And then eventually they flew south to get back home. But we have now a street in my town called Flamingo Way in honor of the flamingos who made their visit to Wisconsin in the spring.
Oh, that's really cool. I can't imagine flamingos being that far up north.
It was pretty crazy.
Those of you who are reminiscing about the themes, using it to identify lower environments, check out our previous academy on Theme Builder. It came out back in Utah and it'll be in the ServiceNow store/plugin manager. You can still create new themes a lot easier than you could before for the next experience to match them. Also, my favorite little tidbit is if you look on Share, Eric Reamer actually posted recreated versions of the OG themes with dark modes on Share. So you can have your own flamingo again. You can have Blimey back. They're really, really cool. So this is the Next Experience UI, which we're going to be telling you a whole bunch of stuff about today. But I would be remiss if we didn't mention the workspaces as well. Just a fun little reminder, you don't have to adopt a workspace immediately when you turn on the Next Experience UI. You'll still be able to access the same lists and forms. So go ahead and enable it. Oh, Eric is in the chat and he posted his link. Thank you so much. Definitely check those out if you want a blast from the past in your instances. So we're going to go ahead and get started with UI Builder's history. And oops, let's start with Chris. Can you tell us about your early days at ServiceNow, what you joined to do, and all of that fun stuff?
Absolutely. Well, I joined ServiceNow in May of 2019 in Chicago. Chicago had been a sales office for us for a while. And at that point in time, we were actually building out an engineering presence. And so I was the first designer who was hired in the Chicago office for ServiceNow. It's this beautiful office in Fulton Market downtown. And I joined to work on UI Builder. So the entire time I've been at ServiceNow has been spent working on UI Builder. I recently took over also the design team for Service Catalog as well. But UI Builder, I joined as the second designer on that project and worked with the team to build it. It was mostly built in Chicago at that point in time. I remember when the team was small enough to fit around a conference room table. It's a lot bigger than that now and spread across several offices, and we've also got remote folks as well who are working on it, including myself now in Wisconsin. But yeah, it was joined to work on UI Builder at that point in time and move us from the agent workspace era into the configurable workspace era and bring our UI framework, our modern UI framework that was just in its very early infancy, build a tool for configuring that UI.
Thank you. So this is, I think this is the oldest I've seen UI Builder. Thank you for sharing these screenshots.
Yeah,
When
this is
was
UI
this from?
Builder from Orlando. So we started working on it and got an initial release out in Orlando. And UI Builder at this point was extremely powerful. It could build one type of page, and it could do building with that page with a grand total of 6 components. So as long as you wanted to build landing pages and as long as you wanted to build with 6 components, you would be good to go. Otherwise, the future UI Builder would enable you to do that. But this was the very first release of UI Builder in Orlando that allowed us to get our feet wet and start really exploring how we would build configurable pages on top of the new UI framework.
And that brings us to the next slide, which is a little bit more modern. I remember a bunch of Brad's OG enablement shows off this version of UI Builder.
Yeah, so what happened was we skipped the release. So we as a team spent the entire time from Orlando to Quebec building out this much more powerful and full featured version of the product. And so, we went dark in Paris, didn't release anything at that point in time, and then came out in Quebec with the very first version of Configurable Workspace, which was the CSM Configurable Workspace. And UI Builder went from being a tool that could build with 6 components and a single page to a tool that could build, I think at the very first release of UI Builder, we had 100 or maybe even 120 total components. So a significant increase in the total number and the capabilities in the tool at that point in time. And every single page in the configurable workspace was built using UI Builder. And so it was able to build an entire fully complete workspace when it came out in Quebec.
And that's, I think, one of the coolest things about current UI Builder, even is in the bottom right corner, you can see a made with UI Builder tag. Apparently, our new homepage is made with UI Builder.
Yeah, many of our modern UIs across many different tools are now built with UI Builder. And somewhat recently, I think 2 or 3 releases ago, we actually went through the effort to rebuild UI Builder on top of UI Builder. And one of the cool things that enabled us to do was build this much more rich and interactive homepage for the tool. And we did that by creating this all in UI Builder. And that little badge in the corner, we wanted to advertise that fact that yes, you can build these sorts of pages with this tool, but UI Builder itself is largely built with UI Builder, which is a bit meta. but it kind of shows the power of and capability of the product.
So I heard you like UI Builder, so I put UI Builder in your UI Builder.
That's right. That's right. It's really weird to open UI Builder inside of UI Builder. It gets a little bit trippy. So I usually, when I'm doing that, I put my UI Builder Chrome in dark mode so that I can keep, the UI Builder page that I'm building in light mode so that I can kind of tell the difference between what I'm looking at.
True, good idea. Now, I always like to, in my experience, as a developer MVP, as a community member, I love providing feedback to the internal groups at ServiceNow in whichever way I can. You have a pretty cool story about the JSON schema editor and how you got, tell us how that got started.
Yeah, so I was on Live Coding Happy Hour. I think this might have been 2021 or 2022. I don't exactly remember. I was on there with a couple of folks, and we were getting towards the end of the show, and Brad had created the page that he wanted to create, and so we were interacting with the audience and asking people, what should we do to in the last 5-10 minutes of the show to enhance this page. It was some sort of like a record creator that would submit the record with a form and that kind of thing. It was a simple app that was being built. And somebody in the comments, the live comments, said, "Oh, well, why don't you add some alerts that show up when you save the record? You press save and you want to make sure that it saved successfully, so we should show an alert that tells you that it actually saved correctly." And at that point in time, the schema, the JSON schema for the alert component wasn't published or wasn't included inside of UIB. And we were live. There was, a bunch of people watching, and Brad was trying to configure this alert component, but we didn't know the JSON schema and the right way to configure it so that it would work. And I was sitting there sweating because I wanted to succeed at configuring the alert, and I didn't remember exactly how to do it, and I wasn't going to be able to look it up in our internal documentation to figure it out. And luckily, one of our developers was in the audience and posted the correct information in YouTube in order to get that thing to work. And so we were able to successfully configure the alert. But at the end of that show, having been embarrassed and sweat bullets, I thought, well, there's got to be a way that we could take this JSON schema and actually turn it into a UI. And so I talked to a couple of my developers, and we thought about it. And about 3 or 4 weeks later, we had created a tool for reading JSON schema and then stamping out UI. And it would work for any component inside of UI Builder as long as the JSON schema was published. And that's still the tool we use when you're configuring a component with JSON. And we haven't built like a custom configuration UI for that JSON. And it reads the schema and it renders the UI so that you're never in a situation where you're on a live show with Brad and you're not able to configure the alert component correctly.
That honestly sounds like my biggest nightmare.
And it was my first show too, so I had never been at ServiceNow live, talking to you all. So it was a little bit fun,
But now you're a seasoned professional.
something like
Any
that.
last comments about this new version of UI Builder?
One of the things that surprised me when I joined ServiceNow was how we use our own tools to build our products. I had worked at other companies before, and the experience or the tools that we had internally were pretty different from what we exposed to customers. And the fact that our internal developers use the same tool that you all have access to build the products that we ship to you, I think that's a pretty cool and unique proposition. And so that's kind of one of the reasons I still love working on UI Builder. I've continued to work on it, is just the fact that we're working on a tool that both is for customers, but also for our internal teams. And, you get the same stuff we do.
And now we move on to our specific release enhancements. We're going to take a walk down memory lane and look back on what all we've improved with UI Builder as the days go on. Let's start with San Diego.
San Diego was a really big release for us. I think it was a really big release for ServiceNow in general, because that was when the Next Experience UI came out. And so there was a ton of stuff that UI Builder had to do in order to enable a lot of these new features and functionality for Next Experience. We also saw a significant amount of additional workspaces that came online. You can see some of them here. And so you went from UI Builder being able to build a single workspace to lots of additional workspaces coming out that were powered by this UI, as well as the platform itself. And so all of that is built on top of the Next Experience UI framework, and UI Builder is heavily used behind the scenes in order to make these UIs work.
Now, I think one of the biggest things that came along with San Diego was the new UI Builder styling tools. Can you tell us a little bit more about that?
Yeah, when UI Builder came out in Quebec, we heavily relied on CSS. And I don't know how many folks in the call are big fans of CSS. I happen to like CSS a lot. I like writing CSS, but I know that there's a lot of folks that are different than me, and maybe a lot of people who curse at CSS and have to write it. So what we did is we kind of revamped the entire UI for setting styling in UIB. We moved away from needing to write CSS. You can still do it if you want to, but we layered an entire visual layer on top of it for setting things like margin and padding and widths and heights and all that kind of stuff. And so it became much more approachable to style your page and lay out your page without needing to know a bunch of CSS. CSS should be illegal. I like it. I like it, but I know I'm confused.
That's my favorite part. CSS is so polarizing among developers. I don't know if I am the one who's frozen or if it's Chris.
Oh,
So, oh, you're back, Chris. Welcome back.
oh, I'm so sorry. Did I get disconnected there for a second?
I don't know if it was you or me. So, could you repeat the last 30 seconds of what you just said?
I I just said that it was really nice to not need to write CSS anymore, and that it was a lot more approachable to people who maybe weren't so familiar with CSS.
And the cool thing about that is that that still persists to today's UI builder. One of my favorite stories to tell is one time I was in a job interview and they're like, "How much do you know about CSS?" And I'm like, "Well, I'm self-taught, so I don't really know the terminology, but I know this, this, and this." And he goes, "Okay, what's the box model of CSS?" And I'm like, "I don't know what that is, but I know that CSS contains matting and pargin." I did it again. Padding and margin. And he goes, "That is the bot." I'm like, "Oh, I guess I knew that. I guess I knew more CSS than I thought I did."
Yep, yep, yep.
Now moving on to Tokyo. I think Tokyo had one of the biggest changes that still persists to this day.
Yeah, Tokyo was another major release for us. So we continued to enhance the features that we already had, but one of the big changes that we made was we started to structure our record page quite a bit differently. And the internal code name for that was Project Voltron. And what we did was we changed the way that we built the record.
Oh no. Can you guys tell me in the chat if it's me or him? Okay, it's him. Thank you so much. You're just going to give him a little bit of a it's not you, it's him. Welcome back. I think you were telling us about the record page and then you cut out.
Oh my goodness. See that the thing is I still see the chat going. And so all the chat's going and telling me that I'm frozen, but the video feed is cut out there. So maybe what I'll do is I'll pause my video for a second just so that this temporary internet issue that I'm having hopefully gets better and we can come back in. But what I was saying was the record page, significant improvements as far as the upgradability and through controllers and presets. We took all of this power and complexity of that record page and we abstracted it away through the form controller. And that made it so that the page itself was a lot easier to understand and comprehend. And yes, I must be on a 56K modem. Sorry about that.
Now, even still to this day, and I've been working in this role for almost 2 years, my brain still struggles to understand presets and controllers. Can you give us like an explain like I'm five version of what these are?
Yeah, so if you open the record page pre-Tokyo, you saw everything. So there was something like 20 data resources, probably 30 client state parameters that were controlling different state on the page. There was a bunch of scripts as well. And this was all very important business logic that controlled the behavior of the page and how it all worked. But it was difficult for us internally, but also especially for customers to understand exactly how all the parts connected together. So the controller, we took all that complex business logic on the page and we brought it into a single entity that we call the form controller, or sometimes it's referred to as the record controller. And so you didn't have to see all the innards of the page, all that complex business logic, all that script, all that client state parameter. What you got was a singular object that handled all of that with a single output API. And so That made it much more straightforward to understand, and all of the components on the page just connect to the controller. So it reduced significantly the complexity of the page and made it a lot more approachable and understandable. Now the presets are the things that connect the controller to the components. So you can kind of think of them as like automatic configuration of a component. And so, for example, on the record page, there's a heading component at the top of the page, and that heading component is rendering the primary value or the primary display value for the record. In a lot of cases, that's the short description. And the heading component is used in lots of different cases for lots of different things, but there's a preset for the heading component that connects it to the record short description and says, in this context, I want this heading component to render text from this field in the database, and sets it all up and configures it automatically so that it just works. And the cool thing about presets is they understand context. And so if you add components onto the page that have presets, they will automatically configure themselves for that particular context if there is a context to configure for.
And I think those are denoted by being highlighted on the component toolbox in UI Builder. So you'll be able to see if you have a controller on your page, which ones can have those preset configurations that go along with the controllers.
That's correct, yes.
That's such a useful feature. Thank you and your designers for making it color coded for people like me.
Well, so this is interesting, actually, I think, because this might be a useful explanation as to why I'm wearing the hard hat in both my profile picture as well as if my internet connection is stable enough that I can turn back on my video. But what I started to notice was that internally, a lot of folks were asking a lot of these questions. ServiceNow is a pretty big company. There's lots of different teams that are building lots of different things, and those teams are using UI Builder. And so they would come and they would ask a bunch of these basic questions like, well, why are we doing this? Or how does this work? What's a preset? What's a controller? And what I found was that it was great to have all these conversations, but I ended up answering the same questions over and over and over again. And so what I created in 2021 was an internal video that explained a lot of these things. And I updated it again in 2023. And then at the beginning of this year, I was asked to create a version that is external. And so I recorded that video outside. And at a particular point in that video, I go into a bunch of metadata and go into the detail about what the macroponent record is, the macroponent table, and how all these pieces fit together. And when I do that, I put on a hard hat because when you're going into the metadata, it's important to wear a hard hat. And so that video will actually be coming out tomorrow at 4:30 p.m. Eastern time on YouTube. And you can see that and watch that content. And we go into a lot of detail about how all of this stuff works together, including things like presets and controllers and pages and experiences and how all the parts connect together.
Thank you so much. I just realized I forgot to mention that at the start of the show. Today's Academy is just a walk down memory lane as a precursor to this video. So that link is going to take you to a YouTube live premiere episode that's going to premiere tomorrow at 4:30. There's going to be a live chat, even though the video is pre-recorded, and you can ask any questions you have, comment, share your stories as well on there. And we'll also have a set of accompanying articles with an update set so you can walk along the UI Builder journey with Chris. So I'll be showing this again later on in the slides, but thank you so much for plugging that in. I totally forgot to do it at the start.
No problem. So that's why I'm wearing the hard hat.
So that's why he's wearing the hard hat. See, guys, there was a reason the whole time. Now we're on to Utah. And what did Utah bring us?
A few different things. So Experience View was a new UI that we display all of the pages and variants in an experience in a much more easy to understand way. We also enhanced page creation significantly. That kind of experience view and page creation together combined to help folks understand better all the different pages and parts of their experience. There's a bunch of also quality of life enhancements. I often need to duplicate a component, and so we added shortcut keys for that functionality. You've got a keyboard shortcut to do that. Yeah, okay, sorry. And then one of the things that we weren't able to get in with the initial release of Voltron was support for multiple controllers at the same time. And so that missing feature was plugged, and that allowed us to create more interesting, complex pages that leveraged multiple controllers at the same time.
Thank you. And now we're going on to Vancouver. I am currently looking into why the link doesn't work for some of us, but it works just fine for me. So, what I think Vancouver had a huge release with the UI Builder preview. What can you tell us about that?
This was the first time where we actually rendered the real page from what we call runtime, basically the actual version of the page directly in UIB. And so you didn't need to have a second browser tab open in order to see that. And so as you were building your page, if you needed to preview what it would look like, you could open up the preview panel and it would show you the real version of the page. And that was a really nice quality of life enhancement, as well as the addition of undo redo, which is one of my favorite features. And we also added support for a popover component and the columns component, which is a much simpler way to lay out basic pages. That component, for basic stuff, you know, 2, 3 column layouts, stacking behavior, responsive behavior built in. Columns is a really simple way to lay out a basic page.
Definitely. It was a really awesome release, especially with how you can resize the columns. My favorite though is the undo redo feature because that saved me so much hassle.
I agree. That was a big one.
Do you have any I'm sure that must have been hard to implement, right?
There were definitely some challenges in implementing it. One of the cool things about the undo redo stack is if you click the little down arrow next to it, it actually tells you what each step in the undo redo did. And so you can see in the screenshot, button one added, container one added. And so tying in all the different properties that were changing and making that work in a good way was definitely a challenge for the engineering team. Also, sometimes you do things in UI Builder and multiple things happen, but you don't want to undo each one. And so you want to combine all those actions into one single undo item. And that was also an interesting challenge from the design perspective to think through, okay, well, when is an action one thing and when is an action multiple things that you want to undo?
And now we're on to Washington. Washington marked a really big change for UI Builder as we move it to the store. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, it allows us to release the product much, twice as many times per year. So, obviously family releases are twice per year, and we have major UI Builder releases now 4 times per year. And so it allows us to bring new features enhancements to you much more quickly, which I really like. I think it's speeded up our development quite a bit.
So, I mean, I'm just fixing the slide over here, and then I'm going to share my screen again. Thank you guys. It looks like it works for some, but not for all, but I added the YouTube link. It's in the chat as well. Another really, really big thing that came with Washington is the visual data binding. That honestly, like being real, data binding was the one thing that I thought made Brad a magician when he was on Live Coding Happy Hour, how he could like remember context dot session dot stuff. And I
Yeah.
always felt like that was the hardest part about UI Builder. And this just makes it amazing because you can see everything. You can see what data is in the property or what data is in the data resource being pulled. It really changed UI Builder for me and the usability for me, along with the formulas that you provide.
Yeah, no, it was a significant improvement. The team did an amazing job building that feature. And we didn't stop with the Washington release. There's been a bunch of quality live life enhancements from Washington to Xanadu in both store releases for each. And so the initial release was really good, but it's gotten significantly better. And I remember I was presenting with Brad at Knowledge this last year, and the first time that came out, there were actually people who cheered, which made me feel real good. But yes, it is a significant improvement to the experience. It allows you to see the data on your page, understand how it's all connected, and connect multiple pieces of data together in interesting ways. That those formulas are very powerful and very useful, and they're simple. They're very similar in a lot of ways to the type of functionality you get in like Excel or Google Sheets. So if you kind of understand how those functions work, like concat or sum or those sorts of things, you can use the same kind of capabilities in UI Builder.
And they show you an example of how to use them and what types of data they accept. It's
Yes.
been so useful to have. And now we come to Xanadu, the last stop that we've had so far. We just recently released the Xanadu Store 2 release, I think, the week of November 7th. So UI Builder should now be showing you a little header up top saying, hey, you should upgrade to the newest version from the store. So be sure to upgrade your UI Builder and so you can see all these cool new features. Any particular one you want to chat about, Chris?
Yeah, I mean, I think all the ones that are here are very, very useful and valuable for different needs. I think responsive authoring has been something that has been requested for a long time. So the ability to add breakpoints to your page and change your UI based on those breakpoints. So that unlocks quite a lot of functionality. If you're building a lot of page variants and targeting those page variants to different criteria, I want to target a particular table or I want target a particular state of some kind. It was a bit difficult previously to set the screen conditions, and so now we have included a condition builder for those screen conditions in UIB, which is the top right corner of the screen. I think the custom illustrations are cool because I'm a designer, but these illustrations are now themed. And so if you're changing your theme, the illustrations change as well, which is super valuable. But then the multi-table data resource, that one, I think if you're not familiar with that one, that allows you to set up queries from multiple places and bring that data into one kind of unified data output object. And it really unlocks some pretty powerful use cases where you can, query multiple tables and bring the data together and then do things like set it up with a repeater and, stamp out some cards or other UI. Or maybe I want, information from the incident table or the user table. I want it to be in one unified view. And so that multi-table data resource is really, really handy for stuff like that.
So we've been seeing a lot of quality of life improvements through the past 3 or 4 versions at this point. What do you think the implications of this changes and moving to the store model are for users and developers out there?
Well, I hope it speeds up it from both sides. So you're getting more features faster from us, and we're able to fix and improve the product for you much more quickly. And so it just reduces the response time where maybe we get feedback from an internal team or an external customer. Now that we're in the store, our ability to adapt and solve the things that you want us to solve is much more rapid. And so I hope that you're seeing these features more quickly, and you complain about something or you ask for something, and we're able to turn down a solution to that problem more quickly.
And I really think I am also biased. I like design a lot. So I really think that the work behind themable illustrations and having custom illustrations that you can upload is really awesome. If you guys want to see more information about any of the features that we've gone over, I know that at least I have it all the way back to Utah, but it's going to be on the YouTube playlist for the next Experience Academy. I'm going to post a link to that here shortly in the chat, or you may already be watching us on YouTube. But you should definitely check out our specific release version academies for more details, live demos, and things like that. And now,
One other thing I'd say too on that is we do have a page in our docs that outlines the release notes for every version, but we also have a what's new link at the top corner of UIB. And so, if you get that banner at the top of UI Builder and it says, hey, upgrade, and you go to the store and you upgrade, and you're curious what's new, well, just click the what's new button up there in the top corner, and it'll give you the top things that we think are really valuable to understand in that particular release version.
100%. And that's something else that came with, I think, Washington. Wasn't that when we released a bunch of in-product help and guided tours for UI Builder?
I think so. The
That
versions
sounds
start
right
to
to me.
rush together in my brain, but yeah, Washington sounds right. That Washington or Vancouver.
Do you have any thoughts to allow UIs to be built for multiple monitor use? That I don't think I've ever kind of heard that use case, even though I live with multiple monitors. I could not exist without it. But have you guys ever thought about something like that?
It has been something that we have discussed, I think, through two different aspects, and I don't know who asked the question, but certainly there are use cases for example, UI builder. You might want to have a multi-monitor UI builder sort of UI. There's some interesting use cases that you could imagine that could be unlocked by supporting that. It's not something that we support today particularly well, but it is something that has been discussed and I've heard about. There's also the idea of how the experiences that you're building with a tool like UI Builder.
Welcome back. What was the second idea you were about to mention?
All right, I'll turn on my video again. Basically, making a workspace or other UI multi-monitor support. So you build that with UIB, and then you publish it out for your users. I think there's some interesting challenges there. I'd like to know a little bit more information about the use case that this particular person is asking about, or if they have some ideas. But I think there's some opportunity there, but it's there's some interesting challenges that we haven't really explored too much on that front.
It looks like they're looking to be able to monitor incidents or chats on one screen while getting access to knowledge on another screen. So, like a multi-monitor workspace.
Interesting.
Yeah. And definitely keep sending us ideas like that. Submit them to the idea portal, that or send them my way through Slack or the community. That way we can communicate it to Chris, or you can hop on a live coding happy hour or a you and I builder live and throw us your ideas in the chat as well.
Yeah.
Who
Yeah,
knows?
thank
You
you for
might
the
be the
feedback.
next. Yeah, thank you. Who knows? You might be the next JSON schema. I'll post the link to the Slack channel in the chat. It's a community run Slack server, and we have a Next Experience Workspace UIB channel where you can post questions and get help. And me and a bunch of community members check it out and see how we can help each other do UI builder stuff. So once again, be sure to tune in tomorrow at 4:30 for the UI Builder 101 video premiere. We're going to have live chat. Me, Chris, and Brad are going to be in the chat answering any questions you might have. Again, don't necessarily throw in super specific use case questions that you need troubleshooting help with. That type of stuff belongs much better on the community forum where you can get the dedicated type of support and help that you might get, not in a live chat. Any last comments about the YouTube video? Are you excited for your video premiere?
I have a mixed set of emotions, but yes, one of them is definitely excitement. I hope that the video serves as a foundation and answers a lot of the basic context questions, but also allows you to build your understanding of Next Experience UI Builder and all of the different various things that come together. And I'm really curious for folks when they watch the video to provide follow-up suggestions. We're looking at other pieces of content that go into even more detail. So this is like it's a UI Builder 101. It's starting it out, but we're talking about other pieces of content to build after this that go into a lot more detail. And I'd like to know what all you would like to know more about so that we can continue to add more videos like this in the future.
And thank you so much for going through all the effort of putting this content together. I really think a lot of us have been looking for a way to break into UI Builder and understand all of the concepts because it does feel a lot different from traditional ServiceNow development. And I really feel like this video is going to provide the foundation that many of us have been missing. And I'm super excited to be able to link it to everybody when they ask me what UI Builder is.
Yeah, if you've ever asked the question why, I think this video does a pretty good job of trying to answer that question. Why are we doing what we're doing? That was one of the big goals when I created the internal version, and I've taken that through to the external YouTube version as well.
And if you want to learn more, is a great segue to our training resources. Accompanying Chris's video, we're also going to have a set of articles that will go into the same level of detail as the video if you prefer to read it versus actually watching the video. We're going to have chapters for the video so you can watch the different chapters if you want. It's going to be the way we can make it the most accessible. But if you want to learn more, go to the Next Experience community, check out the Next Experience Center of Excellence. It recently got a facelift. We also have the Next Experience and UI Builder courses on Now Learning. And we've got the agent, chat, AWA, and sidebar communities. If you're looking specifically for, here we go. If you're looking specifically for more in-depth ServiceNow resources and kind of examples, I strongly suggest you check out snworks/NE workshops. It's our next experience workshop site where we're posting our labs. We posted our labs from Knowledge 24. So if you're wanting to get started in UI Builder, first check out the UI Builder 101 video that releases tomorrow, and then check out the Crafting Workspaces Like a Pro. It's got a great introduction of UI Builder step by step. Unfortunately, they released the new experience page the day after I presented this lab at Knowledge. So I don't have that part in there yet, but it's still going to be a great walkthrough step by step on how UI Builder works and how you can do some of the most common configurations in a workspace that we have our customers do very often. Then there's an advanced workspace configuration with UI Builder Lab, where if you wanted to learn about something as complex as declarative actions, we have a couple of examples there. If you're ready to build your own custom app, check out the Build a Killer Single Page App with UI Builder Lab. And then if you wanted to just throw in a little bit of theming in there, advanced theming, check out the last lab on the site. Additionally, we have, like I said, the Next Experience Center of Excellence. If you're looking for specific service operations workspace resources, definitely check this out. The SOW team recently released a whole bunch of Lunch and Learn series videos, and they also have the boot camp. We get a lot of questions about this. Finally, video resources. If you're looking for a low-key, casual, and fun environment with UI Builder Live, we do basically live demos on there where we try to figure out something in UI Builder and we do it together. Sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't. And that's the fun part about development. I am sure that on Now Learning, there should be HR agent workspace learning options, but I don't have any slides on that currently. I'm sorry. There's the Next Experience Academy YouTube playlists. And if you're looking for more academy sessions like this one, check out all of our sister academies for more information. And here is a QR code for that. Finally, we had a questions about the UI Builder Fundamentals course. We are looking into that, and we're looking into why it changed, but we haven't had any good answers on that just yet. Check back on us in a little while for that one. But thank you so much for joining us, Chris. I think it was tons of fun and really informative to go back and learn about UI Builder's history, especially as I haven't been here that long. It was super awesome to get a behind the scenes look, and I'm really, really excited for tomorrow's video premiere. Any closing statements before we head out?
I will be monitoring the community article that is a companion to the video. There's going to be lots of resources there. And if there's feedback or questions, that will be a great place to post it for all of us who will be monitoring over the next couple of months. So thank you.
Thank you so much. And thank you all so much for tuning in. Again, our next Academy is not going to be in December. It's going to be on January 15th at 11 a.m. Eastern. So I hope everybody has happy holidays, a great new year, and we'll see you in 2025. Bye-bye.